Hey guys, I'm Dave with Dusty Buzzard Chainsaw Carving. I've got maybe 15, 16, 17 chains I need to sharpen tonight before my next job. And I thought, why not in the process, I will make a little video to help you, the basic homeowner, understand more about your saw and your chain and how to sharpen it. So, spend the next 5, 6 minutes with me and I think you'll understand your chain, how it works, how it's designed, and how to sharpen it. Go out and buy one product, spend 5 minutes practicing, and you'll be every bit as good as the pros in sharpening your saw, and in the long run, you'll save buku bucks. So, hey, stick with me, take a look, see what you think. All right, all chainsaw chains are made like this. You've got the tooth that cuts into the log. Then you've got a raker, or otherwise known as a depth gauge. And then you've got another tooth that also cuts the log, just like the previous tooth I just showed you. Tooth, raker, or depth gauge, and tooth, all the way around the chain. It rotates just like that on every single chain. The old school way, we'd take a round file, we'd stick it in the tooth, push, relax, push, relax, over and over again at a certain angle, 30 to 35 degrees, and we would be sharpening underneath this top edge and this outer edge. Same thing with this side. It would come this way, it would sharpen underneath the top edge, and it would sharpen this outer edge, or this side edge. The depth gauge, simply a flat piece of metal. It does no cutting. Remember, tooth, depth gauge, tooth, all the way around the chain. The depth gauge, all it does is run on the log as the chain is spinning, going around and around and around as you run it. It runs on the log and keeps your teeth from cutting too deep into the log. Notice as I lay this file on top of this tooth and this tooth, notice the gap in between the depth gauge and the file. That gap needs to be there. That's showing you how much, that gap shows you how much you're going to grab. The height of that depth gauge is just that much lower than the height of this tooth. So you're grabbing that amount of wood, that space in between the depth gauge and the file. If that depth gauge gets too low, down here like this, your tooth is going to grab so much wood that it's just going to stop your chain from spinning and you're not going to be able to cut. If this depth gauge is too high, there's not going to be any space and your tooth isn't going to be able to grab any wood. So, the reason I say that, check this out. Notice the tip of this tooth. Look at the tip of that tooth, right there. Notice how the top of that tooth angles downward. Look at that. Look at that angle, angling downward. So every time I stick a file in here and I file it, it's going to get shorter. And every time it gets shorter, look at the top of that tooth, if it gets shorter, it's going to go down, down, and down. This point is going to get lower. And as this point gets lower, and this depth gauge stays the same, well, after you sharpen the tooth 3 or 4 times, pretty soon, you're not going to have that gap like you're supposed to have, like I just described, in between the depth gauge and the raker, or the depth gauge and the file. As the tooth gets lower, pretty soon, if I were to lay this file on that tooth after it's been filed quite a few times, you wouldn't have any space between the depth gauge and that file. Well, then the tooth would not be able to grab any wood and you wouldn't be cutting worth of crap. Guys sharpen their chains all the time, and after 4 or 5 times, they're like, man, I've got it sharp as it can get and it won't cut. Well, that's the reason. They didn't file down the depth gauge. The old school way, we'd have to take a round file and file every single tooth all the way around the chain. Then we'd have to take a flat file and file every single raker all the way around the chain. The new school way allows us to sharpen the tooth and file down the raker at the same time, saving us tons of time and getting precision sharpness every single time. You hear that music? That's the way this tool makes me feel every time I use it. All right, now that we've got the basics on how your chain works and how to sharpen it, how it's designed, all we need to know is what to get to sharpen it. Like I told in the beginning, this will solve all your problems. It's not just for the homeowner. If you're a skilled chainsaw sharpener, I think you'll like this better than hand filing, by far. The Stihl 2-in-1 chainsaw chain sharpener. It's got the round file, see on the right and the left, so that sharpen in your chain, and then it's got the flat file there in the center that will sharpen the depth gauge at the same time that you're filing the tooth. So you no longer have to go around and sharpen every tooth and then come back with a flat file and sharpen every single raker. It's got these square guide bars on each side of the files that set down perfectly where it needs to, so you have the desired perfect height, just the way the chain is engineered, so that your files fit right into the teeth and on the depth gauge the way it's supposed to. And you've got the plastic edge, or the plastic handle on the side that produces the perfect angle. If you put it next to your bar and make it parallel, you'll have the correct angle to sharpen the tooth. Don't put it in there like this, don't put it in there like that. Parallel with the bar. Set her there. Relax. Push. Relax. Push. Relax. That's all you need to do. Even better yet, if you go on eBay or Amazon, they now have generic versions. There's another one called Preferred, P-F-E-R-D. This one is just unbranded. I've got one of each. They are just as good. In fact, the one called Preferred is made by the same company that makes the Stihl sharpener. Save yourself $15-20 by getting these. They're $45 if you buy a Stihl. I got this one for $23. The Preferred was, I think, $32. Anyway, go check them out. All right, the last thing we need to know, which file to get. There's a lot of different chains out there. This particular one, if you look at all those numbers, all we need to know is 0.325. That's the size of file I need to get. Yours might say 3/8, yours might say 3/8 LP. There's a lot of different sizes. If you have a question or unsure which number to look at, just take a picture of this on the side of your bar and put it in the comments, and I'll tell you which file you need.